Welcome back to On the Move. The Dow is still off more than 300 points. We got that GDP second quarter reading today from the Commerce Department, contraction of 32.9%. A lot of this, obviously, the pandemic and the impact from the pandemic. To help us understand, though, how we get out of this economic mess, we invite into the stream Paul Romer, Nobel Prize economist and former World Bank chief economist, joining us now from Connecticut. And we want to talk about the efforts in D.C. for stimulus, but something you wrote recently. You have these papers that you're working on with colleagues from Yale, but also publishing in Politico. And you said that it is vital that elected officials realize the stay-at-home orders and social distancing and mask and school closures are not the primary cause of our economic problems. How can that be?
Yep. No, I mean, the evidence is very clear. When people are afraid of getting sick, facing the risk of dying, they don't engage in activities that they would be happy to engage in if they thought those activities were safe. It's just plain common sense. Some people don't understand that things are risky, but when they hear about people getting sick, they react. So there's no solution to this economic slowdown other than making it safe to do things like go to school, go to a restaurant, have a meal. It's not safe to do those things right now. People are not going to do those things right now.
So, Paul, this is an unusual time where economics is public health in a way, right? Because as an economist, if you want to solve the economic issues facing us, you really have to solve the public health crisis. Do you
Absolutely.
think enough on that front? I mean, whether it comes to vaccines, treatments, public policy that is helping keep us safe, what needs to be done?
Yeah. So I've been spending all of my time since March on this issue. I'm not an expert in medicine or epidemiology, but I can read what they write. I can see who's making sense, who's not. It's been clear from the very beginning that more testing would be extremely valuable. Every single test we can run is worth probably 100 times what it costs us to run that test. And here's the value. With some probability, that test is going to find somebody who's spreading the disease. If it finds somebody, you get them into isolation, you stop the spread. So it's like fishing. Every single person you catch who turns out to be infectious helps everyone else. And so we just have way too few tests. We're not spending enough money to get more tests out there of the existing types. We're not spending money to develop new tests the way we're spending money to develop new vaccinations. And worst of all, the CDC is actively discouraging throwing the use of tests, throwing shade on tests. And the FDA is in this kind of cover your ass, go slow mode where they feel they are not placing any priority on the enormous value to society of some cheaper tests that could be available that could give people quicker results. So it's really just been a pathetic response to an urgent problem.
Dr. Romer, it's Brian Chung here. I want to shift the focus to the economic data that we got this morning from the BEA on the Q2 GDP. Everyone expected it to be bad. Everyone expected it to break records. But I'm interested if you saw anything in that report that shows you what, looking forward, might be the permanent damage to this economy. We've heard Fed Chairman Jerome Powell talk about this. Something I was focused on was personal savings. It was 25.7% in the second quarter compared with 9.5% in the first quarter. Does that threaten productivity and the way that the U.S. economy fundamentally operates in a way that might be more longer term than even when we get out of the other side of this virus?
Well, first, let me just say that I think the press has not done a good job, and the government's not done a good job of making these numbers comprehensible. So the first thing we got to say is that the economy is on an upward sloping trend. And then in that second quarter, it moved down from the pre-existing trend, but it moved down by about 10%. So we're about 10% below on an ongoing basis. All of this conversation about quarterly changes and much larger changes just confuses everyone. So we're at about 10% below the run rate for the economy before. Now, the thing we know. We knew in advance, the thing that was clear back in March was that the longer you wait to try and bring people back to jobs, the higher the probability that that job is going to be gone. So this idea that you can get a quick recovery, well, that may have been true if we'd stopped the virus, gotten it under control within a month, but you wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, you're not going to get a V-shaped sudden recovery out there 6, 9 months later, because a lot of the jobs, a lot of the supplier relationships, a lot of the businesses are gone. So I think that we're looking at a very slow recovery. The CBO was predicting getting back to where we were before where they expected us to be in the absence of the pandemic, getting back to that by 2028. I think the recent setbacks because of the kind of speed up of the pandemic in the southern states means that CBO forecast was too ambitious. So now we're looking at maybe getting back to where we were in, well into the decade of the 2030s.
Wow, 2028, really sobering stuff. Dr. Romer, I would love to
remember. But wait, 2028. That was the optimistic scenario, and we're going to miss that one. So it's worse than that.
Wow. Dr. Romer, if you don't mind, I'd like to explore another topic with you, because I know you advised the Department of Justice on the antitrust hearings around Microsoft several years ago. Of course, we had the big tech CEOs, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Alphabet before a hearing yesterday. What do you think should be done as it relates to the big tech companies, maybe from a legislative or a regulatory perspective?
So look, these companies are way too big from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, from a political perspective. So just no question that the vast majority of people in the United States do not want to live in a society where so few people have so much power. Now, how are we going to get there? More power to you if you think it's a good use of your time to go pursue an antitrust remedy. I've been down that path. I think the odds that it will succeed are close to zero. It may bring some political pressure, it may bring some attention, but if you look at the current judiciary we got, you look at some of the recent decisions, there is absolutely no chance that the appeals courts or the Supreme Court are going to upheld something like a breakup or a spin-off of even part of these companies. So you have to pursue some legislative remedies at the same time. I've suggested this idea of imposing a tax on digital advertising revenue, because this tracking surveillance model that's based on targeted advertising is really toxic. So we want to tax that model, drive it out of business, and get firms to go back to a more normal model in a market where people pay something to get something. It's the model that works for Netflix. There's no reason why we couldn't get that for other digital services. The tax on ads that could be imposed by the states, I think, are going to be the fastest path toward kind of restoring some efficiency to this just crazy market for digital services.
I can't let you go. I got to ask you about that. And I wanted to ask you about universal basic income, because with the stimulus check, didn't we just find out that on a limited basis that might work? But this tax on advertising, wouldn't that need to be at a national level as opposed to state by state?
No, absolutely not. Everybody keeps thinking about a corporate income tax. Income can be moved around. There's no way to define where income is realized, because it's the difference between revenue and cost, and those are incurred in different places. But revenue, where it's located. If a firm makes money in Maryland, the Maryland legislature, they passed a bill to tax the revenue that firms collect for serving ads in Maryland. Any state can do this. It poses no big legal questions, no coordination problems. It's very straightforward.
All right, I'm going to throw out this to the team. Has anybody got one last question for Paul Romer? Because it's a shame to let you go with your comments being as insightful as they are, with nobody raising their hands. I will say thank you so much, Paul Romer, Nobel Prize economist and former World Bank chief economist. Good to have you here.
But actually, I'll actually pose one for you. This tax technically is an excise tax. What was the last big excise tax we passed in the United States?
I want to say the Whiskey Rebellion.
No, but it was on tanning bed parlors as part of the ACA. You know, if we can tax the revenue from tanning bed parlors for some public purpose, we can sure as hell tax the revenue from digital advertising. And, you know, the tanning bed tax was at the federal level, but it can be at a state level. So we just got to be creative.